Does Monday at the office feel like a storm? Not with Microsoft Copilot. That feeling when Copilot gets everyone up to speed instantly? It's sunny again. When Copilot simplifies complex data so your teams can act, that sun's shining on a beach. And when Copilot uncovers hidden insights, you're on that beach with your people, and you find buried treasure. That's Microsoft Copilot. Learn more at Microsoft.com/AI for all.
Dreaming of a better sleep? Tossing and turning is not your destiny. And Ollie is here to help. Ollie invites you to sink into sweet, sweet slumber to improve your mental and physical health and overall wellness. More than just melatonin, Ollie's ingredients help you unwind your mind for a delightfully dreamy drift off. Sleep is on the way at Ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to another amazing day right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider. Thank you all so much for joining me today. And today we'll be covering, Democrat Rep. Kulkarni is facing a suit for removal from the ballot. We've seen some other lawsuits this year for removal from the ballots, and last year. We'll dig into how people get removed from the ballot, what's going on with that filing. The Kentucky Department of Education has whittled down their finalists for the Commissioner of Education for the state. This position has to be confirmed by the Senate, but the Board of Education for the state has to first put forward somebody for them to consider. So they've got 3 finalists. We'll be going into why all of them are awful, and we're stuck with a bad choice most likely, but we'll be going into that today. But first, there was no committee hearings yesterday in the Senate and only 3 in the House. It's kind of weird. It means they're really kind of shortening some of their committee hearings today. It's like the middle of the week. It's like a Tuesday. That should be a pretty popular time for committee hearings. But we see in the Senate, they decided not to have any today, only 3 over in the House. And there could be a number of reasons for that. One could be that they're trying to slow walk some bills in order to make some deals going on. They don't want to rush forward. They want people to be able to collect themselves more. There's a variety of reasons why. It could be they don't want certain things to pass. And so by dragging their feet on getting this done, they're able to go ahead and claim that, we just didn't have time to pass it. So that's why we couldn't pass that piece of legislation you cared about so much. But one of those reasons could be that they were certainly rushing through their committee hearings a lot last week, and it possibly led to 2 bills failing that we covered yesterday. Initially, one failed in committee that was brought back and re-voted for, but then another bill that I covered at length regarding the SNAP benefit reform bill, House Bill 367. I covered that pretty in-depthly yesterday. I'm not going to dig back into that, but both those bills failed in committee on Thursday. But then I believe it was House Bill 255, that was the youth labor reform, got called back into committee and was able to pass. And when you look at the comments from Senator Wilson on the labor reform bill that I played for you all yesterday, we could see that he was clearly confused about the bill, had no idea what the bill did, because his comments didn't make a whole lot of sense in regards to what the bill was. On top of that, we see, like I said, House Bill 367 failed, and there's a lot of comments from the senators in that committee hearing that made it seem like they were talking about a different version of the bill again. And so, you could be very gracious and say, they were just confused. I don't think they were confused on the other bill, based on the fact they weren't confused on House Bill 367, that SNAP reform bill, the work requirement that they wanted in order to receive food stamps for people without children, people who able-bodied. So basically House Bill 367 wanted people that didn't have dependents, so no children, no dependents, that were able-bodied to either work volunteer or go to school in order to receive their food stamps benefits. Basically, they couldn't laze around the house and do nothing, and that failed in committee as well. But the comments, as I played for you yesterday, made no sense to what the bill was. It was almost like they're doing it based upon an earlier version of the bill. And you could say that was because they rushed it through, and them not having committee hearings yesterday was to slow things down so people could get caught up on what was coming through committee. I think that may be the case with that labor bill that was voted down initially in committee on Thursday and then was brought up in the same committee and then passed on Friday. That could have been the issue there, but I don't think that was the deal with the SNAP benefits reform. One, it has been recalled, but two, I don't think they were confused at all. I think they literally just were gotten to by the grocery store people. If those of you who may not be aware, but the grocers came to him saying, hey, look, you can't do this. You can't pass this bill doing SNAP benefits reforms. There's apparently, according to some estimates, 16,000 people that fell into the category that House Bill 367 was dealing with, and that category of being able-bodied adults without children or other dependents that were not working, not volunteering, and not going to school. So just sitting around the house doing nothing for no reason other than that they're lazy. And supposedly there was 16,000 that were being faced on losing coverage unless they got off their butts. And so rather than saying, and I covered this, like I said, at length yesterday. So rather than saying, yeah, they need to get to work, this isn't conservative, it's not right to take money from one citizen to fund these people literally laying around all day, not volunteering, not going to school, not doing anything. They don't have kids to take care of. They don't have adults to take care of either, just literally doing nothing. These 16,000 people, rather than saying, look, you guys got to start pulling your own weight, we got to fix our workforce participation rate, everything else, they voted no on that bill. Appears killing it. It doesn't look like right now it's going to be brought back up. And so 16,000 people continue, at least for another year, to not have to work while receiving food stamps benefits. And, a lot of the reasons why, I like I said, I went over yesterday ad nauseum, but one thing I didn't bring up was the grocer side of things. These grocery stores, these people that sell food in the area, they come to them, they make a big claim of saying, look, if you pass this bill, you're going to kick 16,000 people off their benefits that are lazing around the house. They're going to come out and vote against you, and we're going to fund it, make sure they know, because we're worried we won't make as much. Because dirty little secret, right? The high value items, the items they make good markup on, are not your essentials. They make good markup on things like chips and sodas and things. And if people have to go to work, they're not going to die of hunger. Nobody dies of hunger anymore in this country, but they would have had to have gone to work. They may have lost their benefits for a little bit of while, which means that they would have, had to not buy as much as they were getting it figured out, or so on and so forth. And of course there's a grace period too, but frankly, sorry for my coughing, a little tickle in the throat today. But frankly, the grocers didn't want that because they want them to continue on our taxpayer dime to buy these items like the chips, like the sodas that they make big bucks on, instead of just the essentials. So that's certainly a reasoning behind that. If some of you missed yesterday's show, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. We really dug in on that. But there's a few other things, though, going on kind of outside of the legislature side of things as far as bill passel goes. And there's a big story going on with Democrat Representative Kulkarni, who's right now facing a suit for removal from the ballot due to improperly filled out paperwork. So for those of you unaware, to run in a partisan election in Kentucky, to run in a primary, all you need to do to fill out the paperwork, if you're going to run for Republican or Democrat or one of the major parties, is to get 2 signatures from people in your district that belong to that party. So if you're running for Senate, you need to find 2 registered Republicans to sign your paperwork that live in the district. This is a really simple requirement, generally speaking. And we do see people who aren't commonly running for office making the mistake of getting independents or people who are still registered Democrats, especially in the rural parts of Kentucky, to sign their paperwork and then getting removed off ballot. It's not often we see that happen with an incumbent. However, this Democrat representative managed to get somebody that wasn't necessarily a registered Democrat at the time of signing. It's kind of interesting, the intricacies on this. We'll be going over that and a few other suits around ballot access we've seen after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
This episode is brought to you by JLL. Get an insider view into the world of commercial real estate with JLL's podcast, Trends and Insights, the Future of Commercial Real Estate. Whether you're curious about making cities more sustainable, the evolution of office space, or AI opportunities, this podcast will help keep you a step ahead. Tune in for candid conversations with business leaders about the biggest trends impacting how we live, work, and play. Subscribe to Trends and Insights now at jll.com/podcast.
Politics. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. So before the break, I was talking about some of these suits we've seen on people trying to get sued off the ballot. We see these every year. And for those of you who are unaware, the requirements to run for office, I mentioned this last segment, is pretty simple if you're running as a Republican or a Democrat. President, you need to get at least 5,000 registered voters from the party you want to run for in the entire state, right? So, for an example, when Trump was getting on the ballot for Kentucky, he had to go out and get at least 5,000 registered Republicans to sign on saying that he could run for president, saying that they support him being on the ballot. And once you get those many signatures in, you can get printed onto the ballot. Well, that's for a partisan election here in Kentucky. Well, when you go into your congressional races, your state house races, your state senate races, your senate races, any race below president, it's just 2 signatures. You need 2 signatures from people who are registered for the party you're running for. So if you're running as a Democrat, 2 Democrats. If you're running for a Republican, 2 Republicans that live in your district signing for you, saying that, yes, I want them on the ballot to run. It's fairly simple requirement, but yet every year people get sued for it. We've seen at the congressional level, we saw Eric Dieters out of Northern Kentucky suing Massey, trying to sue Massey off the ballot because one of his signers, registered Republican, his house burnt down. And so he was in temporary lodging, but it would appear that temporary lodging, according to affidavits, was within the Massey's congressional district anyways. So really didn't make necessarily a whole lot of sense, but there's already provisions in law regarding how to handle when somebody's house burns down. So that was an unsuccessful suit. Dieter says he's going to appeal. I don't know what he's going to appeal based upon. I don't know what his chances are. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that considering what some of the case law is and some of the law is around voters and voter registration and residency, and in these situations where your house burns down, I don't think he's necessarily going to be successful. But once again, not a lawyer. But here we have a lawsuit at the House level going after an incumbent Democrat, Nima Kulkarni, out of Louisville. So lawsuit's been filed. This from Austin Horn over at the Herald Leader. So lawsuit was filed Monday in Jefferson Circuit Court, and the complaint centers around a woman who was a registered Republican at the time of signing Kulkarni's reelection filing paperwork. So remember, you got 2 people. They just got to be of the same party in your same district. If you're new into office, I could see perhaps that being a little more difficult. But if you're not new into office, knowing that these things are the case, why don't you just get like the party chair of the area or lives in your area, or the precinct captains that live in the area. Like, why are you getting people who were registered Republican at any point just get lifelong Democrats to sign for you? I don't exactly understand, but anyways, the complaint centers around a woman who is registered Republican at the time, citing Kulkarni's reelection filing paperwork. The suit against Kulkarni was filed by a Dennis Horlander, a former Democrat representative who held the office for a decade before losing his seat in the 2018 primary to Kulkarni. In 2020, he lost by a larger margin. In a statement to the Herald Leader, Kulkarni called the suit desperate in an attempt to take away the rights of the voters in the 40th District to choose their own representation. This is always the case, though. Whenever one of these suits are filed, everybody always says, you're destroying democracy and everything else. Look, the requirements are there. Do I think they're stupid? Yeah, I think they're stupid. Should they be gotten rid of? I actually do, because they're so small. There's such a tiny requirement of only 2 signatures that literally, if you mess up on it, it's such a technicality that it's just kind of ridiculous and stupid. I just think they're stupid. You can disagree with me. That's okay. Every state has different requirements to run for office. But I just think having a 2 signature requirement, that's it, and yet we still see people getting removed off the ballot over it, is just ridiculous. And it gets extremely technical, because here's the thing: while candidates are trying to raise money, run for election, all these other things, they got to be spending time, money, and energy fighting these court cases in court to begin with over nitpicky things normally anyways. I do think they're dumb. However, I also think Kulkarni's stupid because she is an incumbent Democrat. She's stupid. I think she's stupid for different reasons. She's not a very honest, straightforward person, but that's more on her beliefs and the arguments I hear from her on the floor. I don't think she is herself necessarily stupid, but I think it's a stupid, ditzy move to go with somebody who ever was a registered. It just seems so silly. Just ask them, are you a registered Democrat right now? Like, check their registration before you have them sign your paperwork. Anyway, so she goes on to say the suit's stupid. He's just trying to get rid of me and everything else. And so it goes on to explain that Sharon LaRue was one of the 2 registered voters of the same party from the district required by law to sign Kulkarni's candidate paperwork. She was a Republican at the time, but weeks later became a Democrat on January 8th, according to records obtained from the Jefferson County Clerk's office. LaRue signed Kulkarni's filing on December 22nd, 2023, according to the suit, as well as records obtained from the Kentucky Secretary of State's office. The Herald Leader verified these claims, which appear in the lawsuit regarding LaRue's political affiliation using open records requests. So, what is Kulkarni's defense here? Because it seems pretty cut and dry. She was a registered Republican at the time of signing her paperwork on the 22nd. She became a Democrat on January 8th, and the filing deadline for the 2024 primary in Kentucky was January 5th. So that was the filing deadline. It was on the 5th. So this woman didn't even change her registration until after the filing deadline for office. So you think that's pretty cut and dry, but Kulkarni's here claiming that she changed her registration on the 8th and the paperwork wasn't certified by the Secretary of State's office until January 17th. But there's a real problem here. And that goes with the actual paperwork. I think Kulkarni is going to get kicked off the ballot. So when we look at the filing paperwork, this is exactly what it says to County Clerk, Secretary of State, for the nomination of State House Rep, the district, for the purpose of having my name placed on the official primary election ballot as a candidate for nomination by, in this case, it would have been the Democrat Party. I, Kulkarni, whatever her full name is, do solemnly swear that my residence is, lists her residence, that my mailing address is, if different, if it's not different, don't do it, that I'm a registered Democrat voter in, and you list your precinct, that I believe in the principles of the Democrat Party and intend to support its principles and policies, and that I meet all statutory and constitutional qualifications for the office which I'm seeking, that if nominated as a candidate for such party at the ensuing election, I will accept the nomination and not withdraw for reasons other than stated in KRS 118.1053, that I will not knowingly violate any election law or any law relating to corrupt and fraudulent practices in campaigns or elections in this state, and if finally elected, I will qualify for the office. Signature of the candidate. It's described and sworn to me by, and then the notary signs, and then it has we, and that would be your first signer's name and the second signer's name, do solemnly swear that we are registered voters and members of the same party and are from the same district or jurisdiction from which the candidate seeks nomination, and that we believe the candidate to be qualified to fill the office. And then you sign and you date, and that was the day it was signed and scribed. So the paperwork filed, she was not a Democrat, registered Democrat at the time of signing, and a notary signed off on the paperwork as well. So at the time of filing, a notary grabbed, they filled this out. They dated it. And the signer, when she signed basically an affidavit, a notarized statement stating she was a Democrat on December 22nd, 2023, she in fact was not a Democrat at that time. The argument that because it wasn't certified until January 17th seems null and void to me. I'm not a lawyer, but seems null and void to me. Because what matters is the document itself is fraudulent here. That the person who signed it, saying they were a Democrat at the time they signed it, at the time it was approved, were not. And in fact, did not change their registration until after the filing deadline. They didn't change it till January 8th. And now here's the real crazy thing that points to even more so why this is a problem. The person who signed this paperwork that was registered Republican, now a registered Democrat, isn't even eligible to vote in that primary. You have to change your registration before December 31st in order to be eligible to vote in that primary. So her signer's not even able to vote for her. That kind of points to the intent of it. I think Kulkarni is going to get kicked off the ballot. And I think she's going to lose her seat because she didn't bother to double check with her signer whether or not they were a Democrat at the time of signing. And those are the people we have representing the Democrat Party. That's their best of the best. Those are the people they're putting forward to be House reps. People that aren't even double checking their filing pay. They're going to lose their seat over an error. Do I think the error is stupid in general that exists? Yeah, but still an error that's, you should know better. But well, coming up after this, we'll be talking about the search for that Commissioner of Education for Kentucky. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. So you may remember that Education Commissioner Jason Glass in 2023 had stepped down from the position, I believe going to go work for some University of Michigan or something stupid. Anyways, and he was a pretty political guy. And you may remember, you know, when he called for teachers that didn't agree with the LGBTQ agenda to just go ahead and quit. Obviously, a big pusher of things like locking down our schools during COVID, of course, and just a large number of things. And he really inserted himself into the political argument. And so as we're looking at replacing Jason Glass, as we're looking at who to put forward, the commissioner board, the way this works is the Board of Commissioners for the Kentucky Department of Education, which, by the way, there was a bill this year, or is a bill, but I don't think it's going to pass, by Wilson in the Senate that would turn the Kentucky Department of Education commissioners into an elected school board, much the same way your local school board is elected with districts and everything. But instead, it's appointed by Bashir. They then get to select a superintendent, state superintendent, basically. And then the Senate has to approve that superintendent. So they're not going to be able to go out there and get some purple-haired leftist that, that they want to get. They're just unable to do that simply because the Senate would never approve them. And so it was announced that they're in contract negotiations with one or multiple, but they've whittled it down to 3 finalists. And those 3 finalists are Buddy Berry, are Robbie Fletcher, and Jim Flynn. 2 of them are current superintendents, and one is the director of the Kentucky Association of Superintendents. He's the director of that, but he was a prior superintendent too. So all of them prior superintendents, all of them Kentucky-based. That's good at least. But what the Senate should be looking for is somebody who really can walk that fine line of not being too political, too heavily involved, injecting themselves into the politics situation, but instead can get the job done. They're not going to get this super conservative guy. It's not going to happen because the board would never put him forward. So, if they can get somebody who's not as far crazy left as Jason Glass, that could be a good option. And so I thought it would be worthwhile for us to look at these 3 options and kind of have a discussion on whether or not they're good or a bad choice for the position. So first up is Buddy Berry. Buddy Berry is the superintendent of Eminence Independent School Districts, a district of just under 1,000 students, according to Niche Schools. Niche Schools also ranks Eminence Independent as 55 out of 168th in the state of school districts. Eminence Schools, once again, this according to Niche, has a 43% reading proficiency level and a 23% math proficiency level. Let me say that again. Over 75% of the students in the district are not proficient in math. On top of that, the district only has a graduation rate of 77%, which is actually like really bad. Like that's not great. That is objectively awful. And when we're looking at superintendents, we hope we could get somebody who, if we're looking for a school superintendent, we'd hope we can get somebody who ran like a tip-top school, like a school that greatly improved in reading and math, a school that is top of its game, that has moved heavily up in rankings, that is having nearly, this gigantic and high graduation rates, that kids are coming out prepared and successful for college, has a low rate of kids committing crimes once they get out of that school, just all these different things, because your hope would be, at least you'd think so, this is how it would be in a business, of course, when you're trying to hire like a regional manager or an operations director, you want somebody who runs a good operation, and your hope is that they can replicate themselves all across their district. So in this case, the hope would be you hire a good superintendent or has a good track record as superintendent, and then they can repeat themselves and get the kind of success they're seeing in their schools out of all the other superintendents in the state, school districts in the state, by having these basic ideas that they get put forward. But Buddy Berry doesn't appear to be the case. It's pretty abysmal rankings, graduation rates, and this is small school, under 1,000 kids. The good sides, he says he's a Christian. He isn't shy about his faith. As far as on social media, he does post about it a little bit. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, corrupty, possibly something illegal going on here. So, Buddy Berry has a nonprofit called School on Fire. And on this nonprofit, the board is made up of a Claude Allen Berry, that's Buddy Berry, Edward Morton Berry, and Skip Berry. So the board of this nonprofit are all people with the last name Berry. And you may ask, well, what's the School on Fire nonprofit? Maybe it's fantastic. Well, what School on Fire is it has some sort of push to do with, technology in the schools, some sort of push when it comes to education. It's kind of hard to understand exactly what their plan is or what they're trying to do fully. It definitely involves technology. It definitely involves kids and teaching. It involves some kind of STEM programs. They talk about things like kids having passion projects, so on and so forth. And so you may say, well, that's not really a big deal. He's just got a nonprofit advocating for those things. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it appears, though, that this nonprofit is used to push forward the idea he has of schooling, which involves a lot of technology, a lot of people on computers pushing technology, all these other things, which I don't think is great, especially when we look at the fact that his school district is not doing particularly well. I think his School on Fire push, it doesn't work, doesn't appear to work. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding don't seem too tasty. But now this is where we go from something maybe you just disagree with or you think is kind of stupid into something that appears improper at the very least, fraudulent, possible misuse of taxpayer resources. So when we look at the staff of School on Fire, we go to our team page. We see Buddy Berry listed as the top there. We see a George Pilhauer, who's the superintendent at some schools in Indiana. And then we see Thom Coffey, who is the assistant superintendent of Eminence Independent School District. So you got Buddy Berry and then his assistant superintendent. So Buddy Berry's second, both as the team at this School on Fire group. And what they do is they charge speaking fees and have these people go and speak in other places. So based upon what I'm seeing here, because you pay for them to come out and speak about this School on Fire thing, that Buddy Berry owns and runs a nonprofit with his family that employs him, his assistant superintendent, where they get paid speaking fees to go talk about this School on Fire thing. And when we look at their clients, we see that UK, Michigan State University, Arkansas Razorbacks, but we see University of Kentucky, Louisville, Bellarmine. That's not a public university. So University of Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky Department of Education, Kentucky Center for Mathematics, Western Kentucky University, Murray State University, Eastern Kentucky, Gallatin County School District, Green River Regional Educational Cooperative, Central Kentucky Educational Cooperative, Northern Kentucky University, Middleborough's Independent Schools, KET, Western Kentucky Educational Cooperative, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's not obviously a taxpayer entity, but we see all these taxpayer entities that are their clients that are paying them money to go speak at. So, but that's not it. There's actually something much more possibly damning here, and we'll be going over that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. Before the break, we were talking about this Berry guy that is one of the finalists to be our state school superintendent, like the head of our Kentucky Department of Education here in the state, Jason Glass's old job. And we're looking into the Kentucky State School Board had named 3 people as possibilities to fill that role. And one of them is Buddy Berry, the first person we're digging into. And we see he's got this nonprofit that he owns, controls, his family's all in charge of, that is giving speeches, it would appear, based on their website, that is collecting speaking fees and fees from taxpayer-funded schools all across the state, and then paying himself and then apparently also his assistant school superintendent to go give these speeches, which is very questionable. You're starting to really toe the line, but it gets significantly worse when we look at something that they did last year. So last year, School on Fire had the Institute for Creativity and Innovation's Deep Dive into Deeper Learning Conference. This was a 2-day conference that was July 26th and 27th in 2023. That Berry was the organizer of, that School on Fire was the organizer of. Participants, people who wanted to go to the conference, paid $295 a person to go. That was the cost. $295 a person, and it was hosted, according to their website, at Eminent Schools the schools he's in charge of. So you have a nonprofit he owns and controls that very possibly is paying him thousands of dollars from the speaking fees the nonprofit is collecting and this conference that people who attended paid $295, and then this conference was held at the school he oversees, the schools he oversees. It's pretty weird, possibly illegal. I mean, we got to start asking some questions here. I mean, here's some basic ones. Are other nonprofits allowed to use the schools for a conference? Is there a way for them to do that? Has it ever happened before? What would be the cost? Did School on Fire pay the Eminence Independent School District for the use of their facilities for this conference? Or did they pay nothing? Because it's very possible. It's possible. We got to dig in more, do more of an investigation here, but just a few minutes of me looking around, this is what I discovered. It is the frameworks there that Buddy Barry, used his nonprofit to host a conference at a school he's in charge of that charged $300 a person, $295, and potentially paid him speaking fees and fees for doing so. He controls the nonprofit. And we're unsure on if the school usage he used, he even paid for it. And so if he didn't pay a rental fee and it's not commonly available to other nonprofits, this is a clear misuse of taxpayer funds. If nobody else has done this and it's not available to other people, and he wasn't just saying, that's a clear misuse. But the other concerning thing, even if that is available to other nonprofits and he did pay them a fee that coincides with what other nonprofits would have to pay, because without further investigation, we don't know. But it does point to he's also got an infrastructure already set up, this School on Fire nonprofit, where school districts could, unless he commits to abandoning this, taking it apart, putting it to the side, whatever, where school districts within the state could be hiring our next Kentucky Commissioner of Education and paying him speaking fees in order to curry favor. Basically, he's already has the infrastructure to be receiving payoffs from these school districts. They shouldn't be on the fight. I figured this out in 5 minutes. How did the board not figure this out? Or do they not care? They probably don't care. Because right now, without further investigation, the possibility is that the next Board of Education director has possibly already misused taxpayer funds and resources, has paid himself thousands of dollars, enriching himself off that process directly into his pocket. And when we look at his clients, we see he's also receiving other tax dollars into this nonprofit. Oh, and by the way, he also has his staff that he's in charge of hiring and firing working at the nonprofit, his assistant superintendent, that he's also collecting speaking fees off of, possibly, it would seem. All to push this ideology that clearly isn't working. When we look at the eminent school scores, we're seeing 43% reading proficiency, 23% math proficiency. We're seeing an unsuccessful school district, 55 out of 168, a 77% graduation rate. Let me put that in perspective for you, okay? One of the candidates, Robbie Fletcher out of Lawrence County, he's got his own issues we'll go into in a bit, but we'll have to go into probably tomorrow. But Robbie Fletcher, another one of the candidates, his school district has a 92% graduation rate. I mean, even JCPS, which is like consistently ranked one of the worst schools in the state, and that's Jefferson County Public Schools, has a graduation rate of 87%. 87%. He's 10% lower than Jefferson County Public Schools. Like, that has some of the 10 worst schools in the state. I said he's at 77% graduation rate. So outside of the fact that there's possible corruption here, his ideas don't work. They don't work at all. And so it's possible he's one of the ones they go with. Politically speaking, compared to the other two, he's the one who's probably most neutral, but he's just possibly corrupt. Need a little more investigation to say for sure. But where there's smoke, there's fire, and Buddy Berry has a whole lot of smoke around him regarding this nonprofit he's running, this School on Fire nonprofit. And frankly, it's crazy. It's crazy to me he's even on the finalists. If I was the board looking at this, this would be disqualifying right away. I was like, the fact I even have questions here. The fact that this could be brought up. Because remember, I have to submit these people over to the Senate, and the Senate has to approve them. If the Senate doesn't approve them, it kicks off this whole other process. So I got to get you through that approval. But to get you through that approval, I got to make sure things like this don't happen. Because if it is discovered that he did not pay for the usage, or it's not open to other nonprofits or anything like that, his shots are dead. He's dead. He's dead. He's DOA. He's dead in the he's dead on arrival into the Senate. And on top of that, he should be double thinking that, because if that really becomes big public information, not only would he probably not be confirmed in the Senate, but he may lose his job that he currently has if that becomes the case. So another candidate we see is Robbie Fletcher, superintendent of Lawrence County. His school's not much better, according to Niche Schools. 42% reading proficiency rating, 23% in math, but has a 92% graduation rate. So he might be a better pick based upon performance. The only problem is he's got advocacy posts on his social media about, of course, paying teachers more, or public schools are great, I hate school choice, blah, 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 blah. Now, what's more interesting, though, is when we look at some posts that he's engaged with, that he's liked or engaged with in positive matter, we see a number of posts where he's not attacking just Trump. He's actually attacking Trump voters, saying that they're dumb and stupid and have no idea what they're talking about. Certainly raises a lot of questions. What about Jim Flynn? What's the best choice here? Well, if you want to know that, you're going to have to tune in tomorrow. We'll be digging into the other two choices at the top tomorrow and issuing a recommendation. We'll have all that tomorrow. But thank you guys for listening today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We know Buddy Berry's not a good choice. We'll find out about the other two. Until then, we'll be seeing you.